Get your imaginations ready because I'm about to paint you a picture. The year is 2000 and you're a top-level executive at the corporation. You're looking to buy a new car and you want to remind all the lower level execs and salespeople at the corporation not only that you have more money than they do, but that you're just better than them in general. But the Ferrari 360 is a little too gaudy, and if you're gonna go that route, you don't quite have Diablo money yet, and you certainly wouldn't buy an Aston Martin because that's British. You need something German, and for whatever reason, you and every other business person on this planet have some sort of weird brand association with BMW. You can't buy a 3 Series because obviously nobody's going to be able to tell your car apart from everybody else's car at the corporation's parking lots. And you laugh in the face of getting a 5 Series. There's a problem though. Gone are the days of the Grand Coupe. 1999 was the final year of the 8 Series, so what do you buy? You buy this, obviously. Thank you so much for tuning into another MotorBiscuit video. My name is Braden Carlson and this is a 2000 BMW 750iL. If you're not familiar with BMW speak, let me break that down for you. The L means long wheelbase and the 50 means that under that hood there's a V12. When this car was new in the year 2000, it cost over $93,000 as a starting price, which means in today's money that works out to over $150,000. We're gonna take you on a little bit of a tour of it and show you what $93,000 got you 20 years ago, and then we'll take you for a little drive and tell you about what it's like to experience the almighty flagship that is the BMW 750iL. Up here, the 7 Series is pretty much all business as usual. If you've ever been in an E46, which is the early 2000s 3 Series model, you'll notice it's not that different aside from everything's a little bit bigger, and where you might find manual seats and things like that in a 3 Series, you've got seat memory and electronic everything all the time in a 7 Series, as one would hope for a car that costs $93,000. You might expect some electric luxury though when the car costs the equivalent of $150,000 today. After all, you wouldn't go pay $150,000 for a 328. Don't mind the tools sitting over there. It is, after all, a 20-year-old BMW, and you do need those quite frequently. The real party trick of the BMW 750iL, other than the V12 under the hood, is the long wheelbase providing an absolutely absurd amount of legroom in the back. I am 6'3", and I've been in cars that have less legroom in the front than this has in the back. Not only that, but it has footrests for you to do businessy things and handle business back here without, I don't know, straining the ball of your foot too much. I'm not really sure if these are both ashtrays or what's going on here really, but in case you need 2 ashtrays or maybe just some interesting cargo space, you've got a lot of it. Of course, you've got window visors, and the back one is even electric, so you can have your driver handle that while you sit back here and focus on doing business for the corporation. Disregarding the price tag, just acknowledging the fact that this kind of has an insane amount of legroom is definitely worthwhile because it's kind of nuts. It's absurd how much room I have back here. It's super comfortable, and yeah, a long road trip would be no problem. Footrest back under and step my way out as I walk my way into the corporation. Oh no.
That's correct, I broke it almost immediately. Now, I could go on for hours about how luxurious the E38 BMW 750iL is, all its luxury features, including its sticker showing you how to fit your 4 golf bags in the trunk properly, and of course, how comfortable it is to sit in it while it's parked. As many of you observant viewers probably took note of, though, it is in fact a car. So let's talk about what it's like to drive.
As one could probably imagine, driving the E38 750iL isn't a sports car-like experience, although to be fair, a pretty hefty majority of the people who own these cars probably didn't drive them. They probably look a little bit more like this.
Listen here, driver, if you touch that brake pedal like that one more time, I'll make sure you never work in this town again.
I know what you're thinking, with a V12, that thing must be fast, right? No. It's got a lot of torque, which is great because we're going up a hill right now, but this is before big luxury cars also had to be fast for some reason. I mean, you look at a Rolls Royce now and they can do 0 to 60 in something like under 5 seconds, which is absolutely nuts for a car that weighs the same as an aircraft carrier. course, that being said, this car is not all that light either, but it's not quite as weird of a scenario because this car was obviously never meant to go fast. It is, however, meant to be pretty comfortable, which it is, save for the fact that these cars are pretty notorious for transmission issues, of which this has plenty. The downshifts feel, we'll call it uninspiring, and the upshifts feel mostly fine most of the time. That is until the transmission gets hot, which you'll find happens if you drive it. Now, of course, while I'm sitting here at this red light in Southern California traffic, it only makes sense to talk about handling. Suffice it to say, you're not going to see any long wheelbase E38s or probably even short wheelbase E38s at a local autocross event. It's 20 years of being driven around probably don't help it, but when people say cars like this are yachts, I don't think I've ever felt a car that really resembles that thinking more than anything else. The steering is like a suggestion, and the car says, yeah, okay, we'll wait for the rudders to get the tail swinging out a little bit. There's some wind, we're gonna have some issues. But it's not even like there's slop or that the steering components are bad. It's just such a weird disconnect from steering a car as you usually would. Despite all of this, though, it does have sport mode, and you can even flip the transmission into manual mode, which being an early 2000s BMW with manual mode, I would highly advise against ever giving that a shot. Speaking of early 2000s BMW memes, that window over there doesn't really work. I mean, it kind of does, but it's not worth the gamble of rolling it down because it might just not go back up. This one, though, beautiful. Works fine. For the most part, everything works, and that's a pretty inspiring thought. Having owned a couple of 90s BMW 3 Series models myself, I know all too well the 90s Bosch electronic components failure BMW window regulator memes that anyone could know. But overall, it's just fine. It's fine. It's not fast. It's not super loud. It's not even the most comfortable car. Of course, it's very plush for its era, but it's just not. For a luxury car, it's excessively dated, as we kind of went over with the luxury features. There just really isn't that many, and even compared to things like the Volkswagen Phaeton, the 750iL kind of takes a back seat. Enthusiasts will be happy to know, though, that the double-edged sword that is depreciation has hit these cars like it's a 500-yard par 5. You like that I tied the golf thing into it? Remember that? If you look hard enough, you can find this trim of this car. The long wheelbase V12 with some small issues. Probably gonna have to tie some loose ends up, but you can find them for under $2,000. In comparison's money, remember that this car was over $150,000, even not by comparison, over $90,000 20 years ago. Almost 100% depreciation rate, which is just absolutely nuts. It's comfortable to drive. It's got a V12. Interior is loaded up and huge. There's more legroom you could ever know what to do with. So obviously you're probably thinking, well, if they're that cheap, I should buy one. And it's not a good idea in the slightest, unless you have a lot of money and a lot of patience. On my phone screen right now, I've got a list of parts available for this BMW 750iL from a very well-renowned and very trustworthy distributor, European Car Parts.
First and foremost, you better hope that when you see the inevitable service engine soon light, that it isn't for a catalyst deficiency code.
If it is, though, you better hope that only one of the two cats on this car has gone out, and you better hope that it's the left one, because that's the cheap one. $3,611.
Things could get pretty expensive under the hood too. Interestingly, the V12 in this car
is effectively two BMW M20 straight-six engines bashed to one crankshaft and working as a V12, and I really mean that. It has two ECUs and two distributors. It is two separate engines running together as one, which means, of course, you have two throttle bodies, so that'll be $3,400, please.
The suspension on the 750iL is self-leveling with electronic damper control, so as one might imagine, the shocks are pretty pricey. The rear suspension comes in the most expensive at a little over $1,500 per corner, and the fronts are almost $1,400 a piece. That means just doing the suspension on this car costs over $6,000 without springs.
That is, of course, assuming the compressor didn't go out with the suspension. If it did, you can add another $1,950.
Somewhat surprisingly though, there is an alternative and way cheaper option in the form of BC Racing coilovers.
They're actually not too unreasonably priced, right around $1,200, and that's quite a bit cheaper than replacing the stock suspension. But keep in mind that not replacing the stock suspension, instead putting coilovers on, is going to alter the ride quality of this car pretty drastically. How about OEM headlights? They're $1,600 a piece.
The list of what's expensive to repair on an E38 BMW could go on forever. In fact, I asked my friend, the owner of this car, if he could list all of the things that are ridiculously expensive to repair.
He laughed and said everything. And he wasn't joking. That's what he put it is the way the great Matt Farah put it, and we'll equate it to this car in particular, but this isn't a $2,000 car. This is a $150,000 car that's been submissively beaten into a $2,000 car. And even though this one is pretty nice, things are going to happen to a high mileage car that's 20 years old. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, also how it is with this car is wildly expensive if anything breaks. Now, my friend that owns this car isn't rich by any means, and he got a really good deal on it, and if something breaks, he's probably not going to replace it with OEM parts, and he might even just keep driving it like he's done with the transmission issues.
This is what they call foreshadowing in the industry.
After all, the best way to handle having an old BMW is to just turn the radio volume up a little bit and pretend you didn't hear anything. We're certainly not telling you that you shouldn't buy a 750i. We're just hoping you understand what you're getting into if you decide to take that plunge. Once you've agreed to the terms of something and you know what's happening from the very beginning, you can't really go back very easily. At any rate, thank you very much for tuning into another MotorBiscuit video. We encourage that everybody enjoy their cars. Just, you know, pick wisely. If you enjoyed this video, do me a solid real quick and hit the subscribe button so you can keep up with videos that we post, and make sure you hit like and leave a comment. Who knows, maybe you've got an E38 BMW that has 500,000 miles. I couldn't say that with a straight face. For more stories on BMWs and anything automotive you could ever imagine, be sure to visit MotorBiscuit.com. Check us out on Instagram at MotorBiscuit Official and on Twitter at BiscuitMotor, and I will see you guys next time.